and good food on their table. After Liberals doubled housing costs, inflated food prices, and unleashed crime on our streets, Pierre is fighting back. His purpose is a Canada with strong take-home pay, safe streets, secure borders, in a self-reliant Canada. This is where I cut in. Wow, this man sounds like a real kick-ass guy. Why is he not our Prime Minister? So purpose of today, we hope to hear his impactful, focused, and immediate thoughts and plans to lead Canada out of this political obscurity and how we might help him to be Canada's next Prime Minister. Welcome, Mr. Pierre Poilievre.
Thank you very much. Hi, guys. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Jeff, for that very kind introduction. It's great to be back in the Okanagan. In fact, I've always believed that the Okanagan is the best part of Alberta. As you know, Albertans are that alien species that invade your wonderful province just in the summer and in the winter. We leave you alone in the shoulder seasons, but of course we leave a lot of money behind as well on our visits through, and my family, that was no different. We grew up in Calgary. I grew up in Calgary, obviously, and when I was a kid, our favorite thing to do was to come camping in the Okanagan, and we'd get on the road trip, and all those spiraling turns back and forth along the way, and we'd arrive. Normally we go to Penticton, though. Okay, so we got someone, oh, where we go, Helena, our Member of Parliament from Penticton is here. Give her a round of applause. So one of the great lessons that my father taught me was when we were camping in Penticton, and they had just invented this thing called jet skis, and I was just a kid, and you have a few of those around here, right? And anyway, we went out to the beach. We had just set up our tent, and I saw these kids tearing around on their jet skis. So of course I went back to my dad and I said, "You've got to rent me one of these things." And he looked into it. It was like $100 an hour. So he said, "Well, we're not going to spend $100 for you to tear around on this thing for an hour. We'll instead rent you one of those little yellow pedal boats." And so anyway, I settled for it because I didn't have any bargaining weight with my dad. It was to take what you get, take it or leave it. So I went pedaling out into the middle of the water, and these rich kids came back with their jet skis, and they started circling me and splashing me with their jet skis. And so I went back to my dad in a puddle of tears and told him how much better the jet ski would have been than the yellow pedal boat. And he said, "I'll make you a deal. When you get old enough to get a driver's license, and you work long enough to save some money, we'll let you borrow the minivan, our Chevy Lumina, and you can drive that out to Penticton on your own, and you can rent yourself a jet ski. That's the deal." Because in life, it's very simple. You work hard, you earn it, and you get it. That's how life goes. And those were the values my folks raised me with, and whether it was camping in Penticton or using my mother's coupon books to go get a beef on the bun, that she could make $1 go further than anyone. I was thinking about making her my finance minister, actually. But the lessons they taught me as a kid growing up in Western Canada is that anybody who works hard gets a great life. That if you put in a hard day's work, you follow the law, you get a good education, you can get yourself a nice home, great food, meat and potatoes on the dinner table, maybe even a cottage, so you can go and recreate and enjoy yourself, and that there are rewards for working hard in this country. And that's the country that gave me everything I have, starting from very modest beginnings. It's the country that gave our other members of Parliament and candidates. We've got the great Dan Albus, a member of Parliament for Kelowna, part of Kelowna. He's a great martial artist as well. He had martial arts studios all over the Okanagan, Wing Chun and Muay Thai, I think. And now he's a great member of Parliament using those skills on the floor of the House of Commons. And we've got Frank Caputo. He's a prosecutor and member of Parliament for Kamloops. Helena Conants from Penticton, Osoyoos, Oliver in the South Okanagan, West Kamloops, West Kootenays, I should say. Mel Arnold from the northern part of the Okanagan is over here as well, our fisheries man. We've got the great Tracy Gray, former member of Parliament. Yes, what a great champion. And she was in the wine business before. So she knows all about the local wine business in this area, and she fought for that and other small businesses on Parliament Hill. Of course, the Conservative Party was founded by alcohol, so that's how John A. Macdonald created this country, over the drink. And of course, Churchill said, alcohol has taken much out of me, but not as much as I've taken out of it. So anyway, great to see you again, Tracy. And thank you very much, Jeff, as well, for that wonderful introduction. He's a wonderful entrepreneur. He started mining companies. He's dug up countless minerals, brought them to the surface, created thousands and thousands of jobs. But of course, his greatest and most treasured achievement is not the money he's made, the jobs he's created, but his beautiful family, his children and his grandchildren. He's got some very young grandchildren. I think 2.5 years old is the youngest one. Is that right? Did I get that right? Good. And I mean, it was a scary moment there when you were there when your grandchild was born, and a little while ago. And of course, when the little one came out of the womb, there was that dreadful silence that we all hope we never experience. No crying, no noise. And the family gasped, wondering if the little one was going to be okay. And then the doctor walked over and whispered something in her ear, and all of a sudden a great cry was let out. The baby kept crying and crying for hours and hours on end. So later that day, Jeff went to the doctor and said, "What is it that you said to our new baby granddaughter that made her cry so loud?" And he said, "I just told her that her share of the national debt was $31,000. And that did it. Well, we want every child that comes into the world in this beautiful country of ours, or every newcomer who arrives on our shores, to have the same beautiful promise that I enjoyed as a kid growing up in this country. But unfortunately, after 10 long Liberal years, that promise, that deal, like everything else, is broken. Housing costs have literally doubled under Liberal policies, depriving an entire generation of the chance of owning homes, with British Columbia having some of the most expensive real estate anywhere in the world. Vancouver now is the most expensive housing market in North America, worse than New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, and countless other places with more money, more people, and a lot less land to build on. We have housing costs, in fact, have risen 30% faster than incomes, the biggest gap of any G7 country. Now, roughly 80% of our young people who don't yet have homes believe they never will. Rent is so expensive that many of our youth are now living in their parents' basements, as Liberal bureaucracy and Liberal taxes have driven up the cost of construction. The price of food is rising. Of course, it's risen 40% faster in Canada under the Liberals than it did in the United States in the exact same period of time. Liberal taxes on our farmers, our food processors, and our truckers is driving those costs higher still. And of course, a lot of this is the result of Liberals doubling our national debt. It seems like that is a future problem, a tomorrow problem, and not a today problem. But of course, when governments run deficits, they print money. Printing money drives up inflation, and that increases the cost of everything. So it is no coincidence that as Liberals doubled the national debt, they also doubled the cost of housing and doubled lineups at our food banks. We have these horrific encampments of homeless people and people addicted to drugs that are now taking over communities that were once tranquil and scenic, risking lives and increasing crime. And of course, our economy is the weakest in the G7. After Mark Carney promised it would be the fastest growing, it is the fastest shrinking. $500 billion of net investment has fled from Canada since the Liberals took office only 10 years ago. That's Canadian money creating American jobs, investing in American industry, and creating American wealth. And so we were hoping that after these 10 years, the Liberals might have learned something, that they would introduce, finally, an affordable budget for an affordable future. But instead, what we saw from Mark Carney is a costly credit card budget that doubles the deficit that Justin Trudeau left behind, increases the industrial carbon taxes on our farmers, our fish harvesters, and others who produce our food and build our homes. A costly credit card budget that will add $78 billion to our debt in just 1 year, or $1/3 of $1 trillion over the next 5 years. All of this costly spending is unnecessary, and most of it is operational. It doesn't even build up the capital of the government. In fact, according to one Liberal MP who was decrying the budget just the other day, there's net $90 billion of new spending in this budget. Only 36% of it is capital. The rest is just being gobbled up in one-time spending that is out the door and gone forever. $90 billion is the new net spending above and beyond the promised, but still yet to be realized savings that are supposed to offset some of it. This credit card budget is the most expensive in Canadian history. And I call it a credit card budget because Mark Carney and the Liberals are putting the future of our country on the national credit card. And what do credit cards come with? Interest payments. In fact, this year, the Liberals will have us spend $56 billion on interest. To be clear, that is more than the Government of Canada spends on health care transfers and more than it collects in GST. So every time you make a purchase and it is taxed, you're taxed on the GST, know that every single penny will go to pay bankers and bondholders rather than paying doctors and nurses. Now, we thought that the previous Liberal Prime Minister was irresponsible with money and that Mark Carney could not possibly be any worse. Put it into perspective, the deficit was projected by the Trudeau government for this year to be $41 billion. So in his 8 months as Prime Minister, Mark Carney has managed to double Justin Trudeau's deficits. So in other words, Mark Carney costs even more than his Liberal predecessor. Meanwhile, he's raising taxes on home building and on food. So let's start with home building. The industrial carbon tax on steel, concrete, cement, glass, aluminum, plastic, all of the things that are necessary to build a home. You tax the things that go into a home, you tax the home itself. This is another Liberal tax increase on homes. According to the Canadian Home Builders Association, these taxes and the failure to remove other taxes on home building will cost 100,000 construction jobs as government continues to stand in the way of home building. And then there's taxes on food. The industrial carbon tax on the farm equipment and the fertilizer of our farmers, in addition to the heavy equipment that goes into food processing facilities, will inevitably get passed on in higher grocery prices that Canadians cannot afford to pay. And for these reasons, and many others, Conservatives will vote against Mark Carney's costly credit card budget, and we will continue to fight for an affordable budget for an affordable Canada. Now, the irony is that we should be the most affordable country anywhere on earth. In fact, Canada should be a dirt cheap place to eat, to house yourself, and to live your life. Why? Why should it be dirt cheap? Because we have the most dirt. We're the second biggest country anywhere in the world. We have the most dirt on which to build homes. We have the second biggest landmass, and much of it is close to places urban centers where we should and could be building. We have the most dirt in which to dig up our resources. We have the most dirt on which to grow food. In other words, it should be cheap in Canada to buy a home, to feed your family, and to power your life with affordable energy. And this speech today, I'm not just going to talk about the costly credit card budget, but also about how we can unlock the potential of our country to be the most affordable place anywhere on earth, because that is really the singular focus right now. Canadians cannot afford to live. Everywhere I go, people tell me they just can't afford life anymore. I was just over to Starbucks this morning to caffeinate myself, and I met a young guy named Axel. He's an immigrant from Libya. He's an engineer, and he said he's planning to go home. He's been here for 15 years, and he says he can't afford to live here, and his quality of life would be better in Libya. Would you have imagined that someone would say that in Canada? But these are the kinds of stories we hear again and again of people who believe that they've been priced out of their own country by their own government. And you know, there's a contradiction in the way that Liberals approach everything. Let's start with housing. So why is it that we have the most expensive housing in the G7? Well, we have the fewest homes per capita, even though we have by far the most land to build on. So we have 10 times as much land to build on as the second closest G7 country, and yet we have the fewest homes. And why is that? Well, because the taxes and bureaucracy block home building. You know, about 50% of the cost of a new home today in Canada is taxes. In Vancouver, it's actually 60%. 60% of the cost of a new home that gets installed in Vancouver is just taxes. The CD Howe did a study on the cost of a home in Vancouver, and they did the gap between the cost of building it and the cost of buying it, and it's $1.3 million. That is the gatekeeper gap. It's the government costs of delayed permits, zoning rules, charges, fees, taxes, and other government costs. More money from a new home goes to bureaucrats in offices than goes to the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers who actually build the homes. So, we agree on the problem. Bureaucracy blocking home building. What's Mark Carney's solution? To create another bureaucracy. He has literally created a new government agency called Build Canada Homes that's supposed to help with the problem of too many government agencies. If bureaucracy is the problem, then bureaucracy cannot be the solution. The solution is for government to get out of the way and off the backs of our home builders, so builders can build, buyers can buy, and sellers can sell. That is how we're going to unlock affordable homes. So this budget did nothing to address that. Our approach as Conservatives will be to get rid of the industrial carbon tax on housing supplies, to get rid of the GST on all new homes, whether they're bought by a first, second, or third-time home buyer. Everyone should be able to buy a home that if it's less than $1.3 million, it should be 100% tax-free. We should incentivize our provinces and municipalities to cut their taxes as well and to speed up their permits. We should go from having the second slowest building permits to the fastest building permits anywhere in the OECD. If we remove the government costs from home building, we could lower the cost of a new home by well over $200,000, which would incentivize more builders to add new supply, increasing employment for our trades workers, and making the dream of home ownership once again possible for every single young person in Canada. That's our mission. And then there's our resources. You know, people might say, well, how does developing our resources make life more affordable? Well, it's really simple. If we were selling more of our resources to the world, our dollar would be at par. And a stronger dollar would mean that absolutely everything that you buy that is internationally priced, that includes energy or food, would be significantly cheaper. That's one of the reasons why life is so much more affordable south of the border. They have a much stronger dollar. But unfortunately, we have seen our energy and resource sector under attack by government bureaucracy and high taxes. The 9 bad Liberal laws that make it uncompetitive for us to develop our resources. You know, we should be the richest and most affordable country in the world. We have the third biggest supply of oil. We're the fifth in natural gas. We are first for uranium, for potash, for fresh water. We have the longest oceanic coastline, the shortest shipping distance to both Asia and Europe from the Americas. These massive natural advantages should be harnessed to enrich our people and empower them with stronger take-home pay and more affordable energy and other goods. The government, though, stands in the way. Canada has the second slowest permits of any country in the OECD to get major projects approved. In fact, in Canada today, it takes 18 years on average to get a mine approved. 18 years. So if you had a child today, they would be age of majority before, and you applied for a mine at the same time as they were born, they'd be age of majority before the shovels ever get into the ground. It takes, for example, 14 years to get an LNG plant approved. In the last decade, the Liberals have allowed only, well, it was actually approved by Harper. There's only been one LNG plant completed in Canada. There has been 8 south of the border in the United States. And in that same time period, the Qataris have doubled their natural gas production, and the Germans built an import terminal for natural gas within 194 days from concept to completion, not to permitting, to the thing being fully built. Here in Canada, as I said, it takes 17 years just to get the permit in the ground. So the problem? Too much bureaucracy. Mark Carney's solution? Add another bureaucracy. He's created yet another bureaucracy, a new bureaucratic hurdle for miners and oil and gas enterprises and other resource companies to jump through in order to get anything approved. And yet again today, instead of getting things done, Mark Carney was standing up doing photo ops, announcing that he's going to approve a bunch of projects that were already going to happen. One of them, the Cdnpoli mine in the East Coast, this mine, there was a Liberal minister, Dominic LeBlanc, who said that his government was going to make sure this project got underway within a year, and that was back in 2017. Now today, Mark Carney is re-announcing that same Liberal promise. You know, most of these projects were on the verge of happening anyway, as they have already gone through years and years of Liberal bureaucracy. So Mark Carney is really, when it comes to getting projects approved, he's kind of like the rooster who thinks that he made the sun go up just because he crowed when the sun went up, right? He's not actually getting anything done. He's just showing up to take credit for things that were going to happen anyway. What we actually need the government to do is something very simple. Get out of the way. Get out of the way, remove the 9 Liberal laws that impose high taxes and bureaucratic delays. Get out of the way, repeal C-69, the No New Pipelines law, C-48, the ban on offshore oil shipping, the industrial carbon tax, the energy cap. Remove all of these obstacles so that our builders can build, our investors can invest, our workers can work, and Canada can take back control of its resource future. That's what the government needs to do. So then there's the overall issue of business investment and productivity. Now, the government claims they've done the same rhetorical trick for the last 10 years. They call spending investment. So they do this trick in order to justify piling on all of this debt. So the Liberals began this promise a decade ago, and what has been the investment result? Well, since they took office, investment in Canada per worker has dropped by 11%, the worst in the G7, the worst in Canadian history. So deficits have not translated into investment. It's kind of like you used to have those alchemists. Remember them? They said that they could turn lead into gold. Well, the modern alchemists, Liberals, tell you that they can turn deficits into investment. And it hasn't happened, as by Mr. Carney's own admission in his budget documents, $500 billion of net investment has left Canada since the Liberals took office, promising that their borrowing would produce that investment. We have the lowest per capita and per worker investment of any G7 country. And in fact, if you look at the investment per worker, take the total investment, divide it by the number of workers, the average worker in Canada gets about $15,000 of investment every year. In the States, it's $28,000. In the OECD, it's $23,000. So our workers get half of the investment of their American competitor and a third less of the average OECD country. This means that they don't get the tools and technology. Oh, I think that's the Liberals calling me right now. They're asking me to stop talking about their economic record. Who is it? Oh, you put it on silence? Okay, I could have taken the call. Next time. But you know, it's actually, you know, the result is that we produce less. Every year, productivity, it's one of these fancy schmancy words, but it's a very simple concept. You take the GDP of the country, divide it by the total number of hours we work, and it works out to 75 American dollars. For every hour a Canadian works, it generates about 75 American dollars. But in the States, it's $97. So the American worker is generating about a third more, not because he's a better worker. Our workers are the best, but because he has far more tools and technology through far more investment. We need to unlock more investment in our country, but government is not going to do it. Right now, they tax and punish investment, and they create government bureaucracies to subsidize investment. It's like Ronald Reagan said, if a Liberal sees something that moves, they tax it. If it keeps moving, they regulate it. And when it stops moving, they subsidize it. Well, why not just get out of the way and let it happen, right? So our approach as conservatives, if you want to unlock investment, here's a secret on how to do it. Get rid of the capital gains tax for anyone who reinvests proceeds here in Canada. That would unlock a boom. Can you imagine that? A farmer sells his farm, but instead of buying the S&P 500 to retire on, he plows the money back into a small business that his kids might run. Or the $500 billion we've lost, imagine if we said to all those investors, bring that money home, invest it in Canada, there will be no tax. Imagine the hundreds of billions that would come pouring back into ventures in this country. And what if we added to that the fastest building permits anywhere in the OECD so that that capital could get to work building stuff, inventing stuff, delivering stuff from day one. And then we should cut taxes on work so that energy that we put into our effort, we actually get rewarded. And then we got to get rid of the industrial carbon tax to lower costs of energy, because energy is the lifeblood of an economy, and low-cost energy is the solution to defeating all poverty. And then what if we got rid of all taxes on home building? Could you imagine all the tariff-proof jobs that we would have in this country, how much more self-reliant and strong we could be as a nation? And what if finally, in addition to making this the best and most open place to do business, a big, open, free enterprise economy, what if we also made our streets safe again by repealing the catch-and-release Liberal laws and locking up the criminals? And then what if at the same time as that we secured our borders to keep out the drugs, guns, and human trafficking? And what if instead of giving out free drugs and giving soft treatment to the drug dealers, we locked up the drug dealers and we gave treatment and recovery services so we could bring our loved ones home drug-free? Then we would have the safest and most affordable country anywhere on earth. We would be booming in this country. Our paychecks would be growing far faster than our cost of living. Mothers would walk down grocery aisles knowing that they could fill the shopping carts with the nutritious, delicious food that they want to buy, rather than worried that they have to turn back items because they can't afford to buy them. Our young people would be able to start families, buy homes, build businesses, and unlock their full potential here in our country. Our seniors would feel a sense of ease as they sit back in their chair knowing that they have an affordable life, and that not only for themselves, but that their grandchildren will have a promising future in this country. That is the hopeful, optimistic vision that we as Conservatives are fighting for on Parliament Hill, so that every kid can come to the beautiful Okanagan, maybe even rent a jet ski, and leave some of their money here with all the great tourism operators and the wineries, and this can be the richest, most affordable country anywhere on earth, where the Canadian promise is once again restored, that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, that hard work gets you a great life in a safe neighborhood under our proud flag, a nation not of bureaucrats and busybodies, tax collectors and toll masters, of gatekeepers and grandees, but instead a nation of entrepreneurs and explorers, of artists and adventurers, of workers and warriors, of patriots and pioneers. That's the country we know. That's the country we love. Now let's make it happen. God bless Canada. Thank you.
We good? Well, that was quite impactful, I think we'd all agree. So my job is to ask a couple questions here. I was provided with a list of questions, and actually Pierre's just done an eloquent job answering them before I needed to ask them. So that was the easy part, and that was the gentle part of the Q&A. But, you know, again, I think we can all agree that was impressive delivery on what the issues are facing us and what the difference is between Conservatives and Liberals. The part that's missing is how do we make it happen? So one of the big things I think, Pierre, is that, you know, this time last year, I think we were ahead by about 20 points in the polls, and we seem to have squandered that lead to the finish line. I think Mark Carney almost took a lot of your speech and turned it into some of his, and more or less took a poser position that he would reduce carbon taxes, not quite, and push on resource development, not quite, and push for building nation-building projects. So I was wondering if you can sort of take the lead from there, that he's taken that, and what your transition from your past pitch is to what it is to going forward today.
So to win the next election, we have to be the party of affordability. We have to be the party that promises that people will have affordable homes, affordable food, they can afford to start families and build a future here in this country. And that people can afford to have hope again. That's what's missing. We need to be the party that allows people to have hope that if they work hard, they can have a great life in this country. As for Mr. Carney, he hasn't honored any of these promises. This is why you have to vote for the real thing. You know, it's one thing for Liberals to plagiarize the Conservative platform 60 days before the election, but as we can see, 60 days after the election, they forget about all those promises. I mean, let's look at the promises. Let's go through them one by one. He said that we'd have the fastest growing economy in the G7. We have the fastest shrinking economy in the G7. He said he'd double home building. Home building is falling by 13%. He said that he would be judged by the prices at the grocery stores. Well, since he took office, grocery price inflation has been 40% higher in Canada than in the US, and we have 7% more people lined up at food banks. He said he'd negotiate a deal, negotiate a win with President Trump. And here we are, 8 months later, still no win, still no deal, still no elbows, still no jobs. And then finally, he said that he would spend less, and we see in the budget he's spending 100% more to our deficit. So Mark Carney is the most costly Prime Minister in Canadian history. His broken promises are costing Canadians We, by contrast, are telling the same story. You'll notice that the policies that I advocated from that mic, they have not changed. I have not uttered one change in direction because we know what this country needs. We need low taxes, balanced budgets, free enterprise, fast permits, and that is how we're going to unlock the promise of this country. Thank you.
So, yeah, great answer. If I could just dig in a little bit different, because again, you're right. You haven't wavered in your comments from the beginning, this time last year and previous to now. What is it going to take to win? It seems like we were caught a little bit flat-footed in the run-up to the election, particularly in some 93 ridings that by the time the writ was dropped, we didn't have members lined up for. Do you think that more local riding input could yield better selected and prepared local candidates? And is it a higher priority today going forward?
I think that's part of it. We obviously have to, I think we're going to nominate candidates earlier this time. I'll add to that, though, we got 2.5 million more votes in the last election than the prior one. We added 25 additional seats. We had the highest share of votes since 1988 and the biggest number of votes our party has ever received, campaigning on making the country more affordable and bringing change. So we have to make small gains on top of that already big gain, and then I think Canadians will elect an affordable government that will deliver an affordable life to the Canadian people.
Great answer. You're a great politician. Understanding that you as the leader are ultimately accountable for the election result, the CPC National Council is responsible for the terrible result, the changes to the CPC National Council. Can we expect, or what changes can we expect to see under your direction?
Well, the council is elected by the members, so they will be the ones that you show up at the convention, you can elect a council. But our focus, we're going to be focusing relentlessly on affordability. That is our biggest priority, the cost of living. People cannot afford to live right now. After 10 years of inflationary spending, big, costly, expensive government, Canadian people are becoming increasingly clear on the point that we are the only party that will ever give them a chance to have a life that they can afford. And our strategy is very simple. We're going to focus on prosecuting the costly credit card agenda of the Liberals and providing a hopeful opportunity that people will be able to afford their lives under a future Conservative government.
Good. So younger and youth voters, you mentioned my granddaughter. That was prophetic that you knew I had a granddaughter. They're obviously an important demographic. And what is the strategy to attract more to the Conservative brand and encourage to participate, advocate, and lead and vote?
Well, that's actually another area of good news in that we won the youth vote this last election. And not only that, the Elections Canada held a mock election in the high schools across Canada, and Conservatives finished first. In other words, I don't know if that's ever happened before. And, you know, I think Churchill said, if you're not a conservative, if you're not a liberal at 20, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative at 50, you have no brain. I've never believed that to be true, but I was thrilled to see that the next tranche of eligible voters, many of whom will have gone from being too young to vote to old enough by the time the next election happens, could put Conservatives by a long shot as their preference. And I think it's very clear. The young people today are the hardest working and have sacrificed the most of any generation since the Second World War. I regularly meet youth who are, while they go to school, are holding down 2 or 3 jobs just to keep their head above water. They're not saving anything up for a mortgage. The idea of backpacking around Europe, which was a kind of luxury that prior generations could take for granted, that's not even on their radar because they can't afford anything. And we are the only party that is providing our young people with the hope that they can afford a home, have a great job, start a family, have kids. So our message for the youth, and I believe the reason why we will have a youth-led victory in the next election, is homes, jobs, and hope. Homes, jobs, and hope. And that's what's going to bring it home for us.
Well, all us young guys would agree with that.
Hey, you're youth, aren't you?
Yes,
Great.
I am. So that moves on to the octogenarians.
Youth used to be 30, but with inflation, it's 40.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I just made it. So we have a lot of octogenarians in the room today, like old Dennis O'Rourke in the back corner there, and his gang here today, many who swung to the Liberals in their last minute of the election. What is your message to them to gain their support?
Well, the first thing is that I mean, a lot of our seniors are struggling to pay for their groceries. That they notice the food prices are rising faster than their pensions, and their fixed incomes make it impossible for them to have the life that they were promised. Unfortunately, grandkids to have the same opportunities that you have. And I would encourage every retired person who has grandkids to ask them how they're doing. Ask them how their lives are. Ask them how their rent is, whether they can afford to pay their bills. And you know, you might have been poking and prodding them to give you great grandkids. You might ask them the reason why they haven't been able to settle down and buy a home. Many of them do want to. I meet a lot of young people who say they want to get married to have kids, and they simply can't afford it. There would be no place to raise those kids. So these are things that we used to take for granted in Canada, but I think all of our grandparents need to reflect on the opportunities that this country supplied so many generations and make sure that your grandkids have those opportunities as well.
So, great answer. And so you're saying that there's a role that they have to get involved in shaping the youth and helping communicate the plan.
Well, in a lot of ways, what we need to do is the youth already have the message. They know what they want. They want to get out there and work hard and earn a great life. And I think the message is that they want to get the same promise from the country that retired Canadians had when they were young.
Okay, great answer. Unfortunately, it was a little long. Dennis fell asleep in the back there, so we'll have to sharpen that up, I guess.
We have a video we can show it to.
Play back later.
All right.
Again, maybe some more time on the pickleball court for you, and you can get that out there to him as well.
Are you going to give me pickleball lessons now?
Not me. No, but the old folks will. Message, again, just a lot of focus on sort of the next phase for you and the party to get us over the line. Obviously, the budget is an issue. Talked to Conrad Black. He wrote a nice article in the newspaper on the weekend about Carney squandering his opportunity post-election with this lame budget. You talked a lot about that. Specifically in voting against the budget, is there any actionable item that you can take out of that that's going to resonate and pick on that lapse of Mr. Carney?
When you say actionable item, you mean what in particular?
Well, what's the other than say voting against it? What actions can you take besides coming up and talking about presenting these problems? What we as a party can we take from that and push forward to get the message out?
Well, that's why I'm here today, to get the message out about it. I think we have to remind Canadians that Mr. Carney is spending your tomorrow on his today. These deficits will come with a very serious price. The Fitch, which is a ratings agency, has said that our debt is far higher than comparable countries that have AAA ratings. And so he is threatening our financial stability with monster deficits. He's threatening your cost of living. But the second part of that is we have to show as an alternative. And our alternative is clear. We're going to cut government waste, bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, handouts to phony refugees, corporate welfare, and other wasted money so that we can bring down the debt, taxes, and inflation, and Canadians can once again afford to live.
Okay. I had the pleasure to testify 2 weeks ago at a parliamentary hearing on critical minerals. You had a nice, smart young lady, Miss Shannon Stubbs, MP Stubbs there. She was on the committee. She did a great job, by the way. And my major point when I was there testifying on behalf of the mining business was there, obviously, and you covered this off, that there was a need for the elimination of Bill C-69, C-48, et cetera, and keep the feds separate from the provincial jurisdictions. Can you elaborate on that position as far as the federal and provincial interrelation, and quite frankly, interference in that, in terms of permitting process? You mentioned about the timeline, but what can we advocate to separate the federal influence over the provincial jurisdiction in minerals?
Well, I'm going to say it again. The federal government needs to do one thing to unlock our resources, and that is get out of the way. Get out of the way. We don't need a politician in a cape to fly around like a pretend superhero. We need liberal laws to be repealed, liberal taxes to be cut, so that our miners can dig mines, our pipeliners can build pipelines, our energy workers can do their jobs. We have the resources, we have trillions of dollars of private money that desires to build these projects. The only thing stopping it is the Liberal government's massive bureaucratic apparatus of high taxes and barriers. So if the federal government gets out of the way, we can get these things done. I like your idea of separating into who does what. The provinces should have exclusive control over permitting projects that are within one province, and the federal government has exclusive control over projects that travel between provinces. And this latter point is very good because, you know, some people say, well, David Eby is going to oppose a pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific. And my answer to that is, who cares? He has no power to block an interprovincial pipeline. It is a federal responsibility. So Mark Carney will try to use David Eby as an excuse for not allowing a pipeline to go ahead. That is not an excuse. The Constitution is very clear on this point. The federal government has the power to go ahead even if the provincial government does not agree. And I'm going to be very clear. Mark Carney still hasn't stated his position on a pipeline to the Pacific. He still doesn't know what he thinks on the subject 8 months after taking the job. As Prime Minister, I would use my federal legal authority to rapidly permit a pipeline from Hardisty, Alberta to Prince Rupert or Kitimat so that we can move 1 million barrels of Western Canadian oil to 2.5 billion energy-hungry customers in Asia.
That's a great answer, and again, I think that was very well covered off in the committee. What would be the outcome from those committee hearings, and is there a role to kind of elevate the findings of the committee, because it was presented by people like myself from industry, and or does this get buried? Is there an actionable item that can come out of that committee meeting? That there was a Liberal committee, obviously chairman, but Ms. Stubbs was quite eloquent in bringing some of the information to the forefront. But from that point on, where does it go from here? I mean, is there something we can do to highlight that?
Probably nowhere.
Okay,
But,
thanks. I'll
I'm just being honest.
I'll put in my expense account for the trip.
The definition of a committee in Ottawa is a group of people who by themselves can do nothing, but together they agree nothing can be done. Look, we already know what needs to happen. Like, it's very simple. We just need to get the government out of the way so we can get things built. We have the resources, we have the workers, we have the investment dollars, we need the permits, and we need the taxes cut. So let's just get it done.
I like it. I just have one quick one, and this one came from a friend of yours, but crime and safety is one of the biggest financial and social impacts on communities. We heard about it earlier from you, again, across Canada. There seems to be a disconnect between the court system and public opinion, and that distance is widening. What would you do to narrow the gap to regain public confidence in our justice system?
Lock up the tiny group of criminals who do all of the crime. Kelowna's mayor revealed just the other day that 15 offenders had to be arrested 1,300 times in 1 year. In Vancouver, they had the same 40 offenders who were arrested 6,000 times in a year. So on average, you have one offender who is arrested literally 100 to 150 times a year, and those are just the times they got caught. That means there are probably hundreds of others. There's a guy in Penticton whose name is Levi. Is anyone from Penticton here today? Do you know Levi? He's more famous than I am, but this guy, apparently he does so much crime that when he's out of jail, the crime rate for all of Penticton goes up. I mean, like one guy does enough crime to move the crime rate. The good news is we don't have a lot of criminals in Canada. The bad news is they're very, very prolific. They do a phenomenal amount of crime. So imagine if you just locked those guys up and you left them behind bars. That's why I propose a 3 strikes you're out law. 3 serious convictions and you're no longer ever again eligible for bail, parole, probation, or house arrest. It's jail, not bail.
Again, good answer, and I understand there's a neighbor of ours, Chief Clarence Louis, down the road there has got a nice prison that's about 40% occupied, so it 20% occupied. So there's lots of room.
There's room at the Hotel California.
You got her.
But the problem is, it is like the Hotel California. These guys check out, but they never really leave, right? They go back in again and again and again and again. So, but maybe there's a few, this small group of put in here in Kelowna, 15 criminals. You take them off the street, send them over to Chief Louis. He'll put them in the prison there, and all of a sudden you have 1,000 fewer crimes in Kelowna. Sound like an idea?
Let's make it happen. And I think last but not least, a tougher one, what are your thoughts and suggested path forward with the Cowichan decision and resetting the relations with First Nations in BC and Canada, legislative solutions over the courts?
Well, the federal government has to make a clear and decisive argument in the courts in favor of fee-simple property rights. If we do not have fee-simple property rights, our entire economy is going to collapse. So this ruling cannot stand, period. Your land is your land. When you buy a house, you own the land. It belongs to you. No one can take it away. And the federal government needs to fearlessly argue that before the courts, and the judges better realize the massive, irreparable damage that they will do not only to our economy, but to the future of this country if they undermine the very basic notion of private property rights of homeowners. So we will fight for homeowners and property rights now and forever.
Well, that's my list of questions. I don't know if where's the young fellas? Any more questions? Might as well take one from the floor.
There's a, right up here, and then there's a young lady at the back as well who was pretty quick.
Please, can you announce that this hotel is on Canadian soil?
It is on Canadian soil.
That's it?
There's a nice young lady. This young lady was very quick to have her hand up. We should give her a chance. Do you want to shout it out? Are you okay shouting it out? Thank you.
My question is about your support economic stability in regards to temporary foreign worker. Is necessarily just to end it or to reform it? Because we support migrant workers, temporary foreign workers, farming, construction workers, healthcare providers, fast food. In the long term, what is your strategy to see the flow of the changes? Because it's gonna take some time to make this changes and give this opportunity of transitioning. Because as we have employers who hire temporary foreign worker heavily for the Okinaga and for farming and also in other sectors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And great question. So, First of all, I think that the individual workers, we should honor them. They are very good people. I've met a lot of the temporary foreign workers. They themselves are wonderful, and they're hardworking, and they want the same thing as everyone else. The problem we have in Canada is that we have the highest, the worst youth employment numbers in 30 years. We have hundreds of thousands of unemployed young people who can't get starter jobs that would launch them into future careers. And at the same time, employers are using temporary foreign workers that drive down wages and drive out jobs for the youth who need them. So the conservative answer to that problem is that we're going to carve out the agriculture program so that farmers can continue to have their existing access to temporary foreign workers that will serve their farms and bring food through our entire system. The caregiver program will remain, but we intend to get rid of the temporary foreign worker program other than that. And the reason is that we need Canadian jobs to go to Canadian workers, and in particular, Canadian youth. Thank you.
Thanks, Pierre. I'll just finish up in closing, but thanks very much for your time.
All right. Good work. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, what a great job. Good show. So it's safe to say, quoting a well-regarded American president of the past, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate for the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise to the occasion. That's us. Canadians don't want their children living in poverty and debt. We need to build a strong and robust resource economy. We have done it before, and we can do it again. We heard that from Pierre, and I'm telling you that from our industry. We need to look back to move forward and do less with less while living within our means. Stop sabotaging ourselves by electing bad management and creating poor public policy. We heard that again out of Pierre. Make Conservatives and Canada attractive again through critical, original, authentic, and competitive action. No elbows up in time in the penalty box. We need you to be in a position with a stick on the ice, shooting pucks on the net. I trust all of you agree this has been a valuable, informative afternoon. Please join me with a resounding show of gratitude for our Liberal leader, Pierre Poilievre, and a frank conversation with us today.